Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We're going to get started just in a couple minutes, promptly at 1 p.m. Eastern. So hang tight and we'll get going shortly. Thanks. Hello everyone and welcome to the DLC Solid State Lighting version 5 webinar. We are very excited to have released this new version and we're excited to spend some time talking about it today. So thank you for joining. I know that 2 hours is a long time to take out of your day. Also, a sincere thank you to all of you that participated in our stakeholder input process. It is a key part of the DLC process, so really thank you for your time and expertise. Today, we're going to talk through the key requirements of version 5 and then take some time at the end to answer any questions you have. Before we get too far, I do want to let everyone know that we are recording this webinar. Everyone is muted and we'll go through some logistics in a minute, but just want to let everyone know so they're aware this webinar is being recorded and we will post the recorded webinar and slides on our website. So here's the agenda for today. As you can see, it's quite packed, but we should be able to cover the key aspects of the requirements. We'll start out with some quick introductions to the folks that we have on the call. We'll talk about purpose and goals of version 5, and I'll go into an overview of how the requirements are structured. From there, we'll move on to the technical requirements by topic, both for version 5.0 and version 5.1. The last portion of the presentation will focus on the manufacturer and industry guidance that was released along with the policy documents, and that contains implementation details, essentially meaning that we want to describe what it takes to get a product listed under version 5. And then finally, we have left some time, hopefully about 20 minutes for question and answer at the end, and we'll explain the format for that in a minute. Before we get too far, I'd like to introduce you to the team that we have with us today. My name is Axel Pearson. I'm a Senior Technical Product Manager here at DLC. I'll present a bit of the requirements, the introduction, and I'll also facilitate the question and answer session at the end. We'll hear from Leora Radetsky, DLC's Senior Lighting Scientist, and Bernadette Boudreau, our Senior Technical Operations Manager. We also have some technical support with us today. Yaozheng Wen from Energy Solutions, and Dan Mellinger is here from Energy Futures Group, and we'll hear from them a bit later in the webinar with some of the requirements. Additionally, we have Aaron Feldman from the DLC team and Dave Ryan from DNR. Sorry, I don't have your pictures up, but they will be answering questions. So if you enter a question into the questions pane on the GoToWebinar dashboard, you'll likely get a response from them. Again, we'll talk about questions and answers more in a moment. First, some logistics. Again, slides and the recorded webinar will be posted on the DLC News and Events page on our website after the webinar. All attendees are automatically muted, so you can use the chat feature to communicate with us if needed, and use that question pane to enter questions. So as I mentioned, we'll leave 20 minutes at the end for a Q&A session. Please use the question pane in the GoToWebinar app to submit questions. You don't have to hold your questions until the end. Just enter them as they come up and we'll do our best to answer. You may get an answer right away from Aaron and Dave, but if you don't, then we've likely selected your question to be read aloud at the end. So that is to say, those subject matter experts are working and will be firing questions and answers off. If you still don't receive an answer at the end, we'll make an effort to follow up with you after the webinar. Okay, without further ado or logistics, we can get into it. So the purpose of this new version of the solid-state lighting requirements is to continue to accelerate broad-scale energy savings while improving the quality of light and controllability of DLC-listed products. To fulfill this purpose, we have chosen to focus in three key areas: efficacy, quality of light, and controllability. While our last major revisions have emphasized efficacy improvements, this one is a little bit different. So along with a measured approach to increasing efficacy, we are emphasizing quality of light and controllability of the DLC listed products. So this includes new requirements or aspects to the requirements that address things like color quality, light distribution and glare, as well as dimming, integral controls, and controls communication. So our goal with this new policy is to balance the push for ever-increasing energy efficiency with assurance that illumination supports user comfort and satisfaction. We recognize that we must balance both of these things to really realize the full potential of this technology, and really that's the aim of version 5. So why increase efficacy? Well, this one is in our mission. We want to provide more energy savings to our utility members and their efficiency programs. We also want to provide more value to lighting customers by lowering their utility bills and reducing things like carbon emissions. As we'll see in a moment, the efficacy increases in version 5 are lower than in previous revisions, and that is to, again, meet that goal of balancing energy efficiency and quality of light and product cost. So why improve quality of light? Well, let's first start by defining what we're talking about when we say quality of light. We're referring to the aspects of light that impact things like productivity, performance, comfort, safety, and much more. And these are very important things for customer satisfaction. As research continues to improve our understanding of how light affects humans, it's essential to support development and installation of products whose virtues go beyond saving energy. And this is also an opportunity to avoid doing something that is not good for our customers. If we save them energy but negatively impact people and their businesses, we've really done a disservice. So finally, we want to equip users of the QPL with better information so that they can identify and differentiate products that have better quality of light performance. Finally, why improve controllability? More controlled lighting can give us energy savings both to the utility programs and end customers. It can provide a backbone for IoT, the Internet of Things, and new opportunities and value propositions for lighting that we're just beginning to realize. It also has a strong connection to quality of light. We can use more controllable lighting to provide the right light at the right time for the task. So with these new requirements, we are encouraging more controllable lighting for both energy savings and for the enhanced value propositions it can provide. So with version 5, we've developed the following goals. The efficacy of listed products will increase with the pace of technology without compromising the quality of light. By 2022, virtually all DLC listed products will be dimmable, enabling increased energy savings and more user satisfaction. We've introduced new color requirements that will improve color performance and begin a transition to new color of light metrics established by the IES under TM30 that better characterize the color performance and quality of lighting. These new enhancements to the DLC color requirements will help provide people with the lighting they want for their application and provide greater color consistency over time. And this is an important issue with LED lighting. And finally, we've revised DLC Premium's classification to include additional criteria for glare performance. This will help ensure that products that achieve higher efficacy of premium do not do so by compromising glare control. So the users of DLC Premium lighting will have better confidence in the glare performance of these products. So I'll take a little bit of time to provide a kind of a high-level overview of the technical requirements in version 5. I'll cover some key points, the structure of the two documents that were released last week, version 5.0 and 5.1, and then take a high-level look at the timeline. And I want to say before I jump into this, a lot of the implementation details are covered in the manufacturer and industry guidance section, and we'll be covering that at the end of the webinar. Okay, here are some key points of version 5. The version 5 requirements include two policies, version 5.0 and 5.1, released at the same time last Friday, February 14th. However, the two versions have different effective dates. Version 5.0 is effective as of February 18th, 2020, just a couple days ago, and version 5.1 will be effective on July 1st, 2020. Again, more on timeline will come a little bit later. DLC will automatically update products currently listed under version 4.4 that meet the 5.0 requirements. So if a product has any data that meets the version 5 requirements, we will automatically update it. Again, this is explained in more detail a bit later. The application fee amounts will be modified and they will become effective on July 1st, 2020. Finally, again, going over the timeline in more detail a few more times throughout the presentation, but the take-home message here is that by 2021, all products must meet the 5.0 requirements, and by 2022, all products must meet the version 5.1 requirements. So for those of you that have been following our version 5 policy development process, you may be wondering about the draft versions of 5.1. And the answer is that most everything included in these two documents has been presented in draft form as version 5.0. However, after draft 2, we met with our members, our DLC members, and key stakeholders and really determined that it was most appropriate to split the documents into two versions of technical requirements and assign those different effective dates. This allows the utility programs to require 5.0. Well, I should say again, these are effective on February 18th. So those efficacy and dimming for interior luminaire and retrofit kits are included in version 5.0. So this allows utility programs to get these products into their efficiency programs more quickly than proposed in draft 2. So again, we will automatically transition those version 4.4 products to version 5.0 again, kind of helping that transition, allowing the utilities to require version 5 in their programs. So version 5 on the right-hand side of the screen is effective July 1st, 2020, and includes those quality of light and the comprehensive dimming requirements. So again, quality of light, and we'll explore these in quite a bit more detail, include color and glare requirements, as well as the dimming requirements under version 5.1 really cover all product categories. So I understand this is a busy slide. I don't intend to talk through this in much detail, but I just wanted to include it in the slides so you have it when you download the slides from our website. This kind of serves as a cheat sheet, if you will, for the changes from version 4.4 to 5.0 and then 5.0 to 5.1. This is something that a few of our stakeholders have emailed and asked us about as a summary of the changes. What I will call out is this is kind of another way of showing the previous slide. There are just the efficacy and dimming requirements in version 5.0 and much more in 5.1. So again, this slide will be available in these slides. We'll post it on our website, but I won't spend too much time going line by line. Okay, here is the timeline slide again. We're going to be covering this a few more times in the webinar, so I just want to highlight some key dates to hopefully ward off any immediate questions that you have. February 18th is the first day that version 5.0 applications were accepted, and October 31st will be the last day they are accepted. Version 4.4 applications will be accepted until May 31st, at which time any application must be 5.0. So that's that grace period that's allowed for any version 4.4 applications that are kind of recently submitted or in development now. We allow that time for 4.4 applications to be accepted again until May 31st. So starting June 1st, any application must be 5.0. July 1st is the first day that version 5.1 applications are accepted. Products that do not meet version 5 requirements will be delisted on December 31st. So another way to say that is any products that exist on the QPL now that are 4.4 will remain listed until December 31st, 2020. A similar date for version 5.1 is December 31st, 2021. So products that don't meet those quality of light and the comprehensive dimming requirements will be delisted on that date. Again, more coming on the timeline a little bit later. Okay, so now we'll take some time to walk through the version 5 technical requirements. If you haven't read the requirements yet, please do so. I understand they're long documents, but if you have, there's a good amount of detail in them, which we won't have time to cover in 100% detail today, but we will touch on the key aspects of each topic. So please know there is more detail in the policy documents. And again, we will also have a Q&A session after the presentation to answer some of your questions. So you can enter those into the question pane. I'm glancing over and I see a few questions have come in already, so that's good news. Okay, starting with efficacy. As I've mentioned with version 5, our goal is to increase efficacy with the pace of technology without compromising the quality of light. So the efficacy increases intend to balance energy savings, product cost, and quality of light. The changes in 5.0 efficacy requirements increase an average of 12% over the version 4.4 requirements across all categories, though it's important to note that some categories only increase something like 5% and some up to 23%, but an average across all of them would be about 12%. To meet DLC premium products, must have an efficacy of 15 lumens per watt higher over standard. So this is a flat increase, and this is a bit of a change over version 4.4. So we hope this is more simple. To qualify for premium, you just have to add 15 onto the standard requirement. Again, much more on premium a bit later. Here are the changes for version 5.0 compared to the version 4.4 requirements. This table is in the final policy document on the website, and it will be in the slides that we post, so I'm not going to go over again line by line, but you can see the premium requirements on the right-hand side of the screen are 15 points higher for each general application. And as we have done in the past, retrofit kit and lamp requirements align with their luminaire counterparts. So that's why they're not explicitly listed here. I'll also call out that we have aligned outdoor efficacy thresholds, which provide for greater or easier implementation with field adjustable products. And it also reflects the technology challenges of higher efficacy at higher lumen output. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to pass it on to Dan Mellinger, and he is going to cover the controllability requirements in version 5.0. Dan, let
All
me
right,
know
thanks,
when
Axel.
you like a new slide.
Okay, you can hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, great, thank you, Axel, and hello to everyone. Pleased to be here talking to you about the version 5 technical requirements. I'm going to cover controllability as well as premium over the next few slides. And starting with the controllability section that we have up on the slide here, the requirements are really intended to build upon and not substantially change or replace the requirements that existed in version 4.4. And most notably, there are new dimming requirements focused on indoor products, indoor luminaires, and retrofit kits. I'll talk about those in just a minute. The reporting for integral controls is unchanged relative to version 4.4. So initially in 5.0, there's no change for integral control reporting. So let's take a look at the specific details on the next slide. Under version 4.4, dimming was a required reporting item for all products. And now under 5.0, indoor luminaires and retrofit kits, with a couple of exclusions that are highlighted in the yellow box in the middle, those indoor luminaires and retrofit kits must be capable of continuous dimming, which that capability, just for those who want to clarify, is defined at the bottom of this slide and also in the policy document. The manufacturer claims of dimming performance will be evaluated against the product specification sheet, and that capability must be clearly identified on the publicly available specification sheet. A quick note that the dimming requirement is not limited to any specific dimming protocol, such as 0 to 10 volt. It's the act of dimming itself that's the focus of this requirement, and not how dimming is actually achieved. And also, just to clarify, that the dimming requirement applies to the product. This policy doesn't address anything from an installation or system level requirement. This is only the product capability. So whether or not that dimming is used in the field or is a requirement of a utility program, it's outside the scope or the purview of this policy. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, the integral control requirements under 5.0 are unchanged relative to 4.4. So it's an optional reporting metric for standard products and a required reporting metric for premium. All right, so moving on to the 5.0 requirements for DLC Premium. There are two main changes to be aware of. First, as Axel mentioned, the higher efficacy required under Premium will be a flat 15 lumen per watt increase over standard, and all premium products must be capable of continuous dimming. So looking at these requirements in more detail, the change to efficacy simplifies the requirement. Under 4.4, the efficacy increase for premium varied by general application. A few slides ago, Axel had the efficacy table up, and you may be familiar with those, or you may have noted that there was quite a variety of efficacy increases for 4.4 premium. And that weighted average increase was 22 lumens per watt. Under 5.0, the efficacy increase is that 15 lumen per watt applied across the board to all general applications. And that's, of course, a smaller increment than in the past relative to that average of 22 lumens per watt. And that was done so to, very intentionally to balance the quality requirements that will apply under version 5.1, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. In terms of controllability, the continuous dimming requirement for version 5.0 Premium applies to all products. So unlike DLC Standard, there are no exceptions to the dimming requirement. Every single premium product under 5.0 will be required to be capable of continuous dimming. And just a reminder that replacement lamps and specialty primary use designations, specialty PUDs, are not eligible for premium. So on when I was discussing controllability a minute ago, one of those exceptions for dimming were the specialty hazardous PUDs. And that's not applicable here, first, because there are no exceptions for premium, but second, the specialty products aren't eligible for premium designation. So wrapping up the version 5.0 overview, it's important to note that any requirement that we did not explicitly address here remains unchanged from version 4.4. So it's really just the efficacy, dimming, the requirement being indoor luminaires and retrofit for standard and all products for premium. And anything else, such as those listed here, like CCT, CRI, the efficacy allowances, etc., those remain unchanged from version 4.4.
Thank you, Dan. I will take it back just for a moment here. And so we have wrapped up the version 5.0 technical requirements, and now we're going to get into the version 5.1 technical requirements. And so we'll cover efficacy again, but in a moment you'll see there's not many changes there. But again, this is the version 5.1 is really focusing on those quality of light metrics, and so that's where we'll get into more detail about color and light distribution and the remaining controllability requirements. So changes to efficacy in version 5.1 are pretty simple. The efficacy values and the minimum light output values have not changed from version 5.0, but it does include a few changes here. So the minimum light output requirements for high bay primary use designations have been revised. And this is really to make room for a new low bay general application with new minimum light output and efficacy requirements. And finally, we'll get into this a bit later, but we've removed the in luminaire requirements for linear replacement lamps per the reference housings update. Again, we're going to cover this a bit later in more detail. Okay, and now I'm going to pass it on to Leora Radetsky, and she is going to cover the spectral quality requirements.
Thanks, Axel. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, Leora.
Hi, everyone. In 5.1, we're introducing some spectral quality requirements specifically related to color characteristics of light to help address quality of light. Spectral quality describes a broad set of lighting properties that are calculated from the spectral power distribution, or SPD, of the emitted light, which includes metrics ranging from circadian effects to photobiological hazards and much more. The spectral quality requirements in 5.1 focus on color quality aspects like the color of light and the color rendition of objects. It is very important that we include color quality in our requirements, as studies around the world show that color quality directly influences task performance, it relates to occupant safety and well-being, and of course it affects aesthetics. To focus on the right level of precision, we have to make sure we're aligning with industry organizations, practices, and guidelines. The standard requirements distinguish products that meet a minimal acceptable level of performance. To enable differentiation of products that provide superior color quality, we have premium and allowances unlocking classifications. But we are mindful that we aren't placing excessive burden or expense on applicants. Keeping these things in mind, the spectral quality requirements in 5.1 expand the CCT range allowed and improve consistency of CCT across all manufacturers for premium products. 5.1 also introduces a requirement to include both CRI and TM30 color rendition measures in the test reports, with specific requirements to be used as a pathway for qualification. Either one can be used as a pathway for qualification. There's also a new color maintenance requirement for all products and a reporting requirement for spectral data. So let's move on to the specific requirements. Next. Thanks, Axel. Chromaticity describes the color appearance of the emitted light, independent of its intensity. We are describing the chromaticity with the metrics CCT and DUV. CCT, or correlated color temperature, is the temperature of a black body radiator whose chromaticity most nearly resembles that of the source. And DUV is the measure of the distance from the black body locus in the CAE 1960 UV color space. The standard color requirements in 5.1 are the same as in 4.4, except we're extending the eligible CCTs to include the full range of defined CCT quadrangles in ANSI C78 377, all the way up to 6500K. And all products, both indoor and outdoor, are required to be within the ANSI-defined 7-step quadrangles for standard qualification, with an additional requirement for premium qualification that all indoor products, except for high bay, be within the 4-step quadrangles. This change generally improves the color appearance consistency across all products, for outdoor products, and premium indoor products within any given CCT. In 5.1, we've introduced a requirement to report spectral data per TM27 or TM33 in increments of 5 nanometers or less as a required accompanying component for products that undergo LM79 testing. Please refer to the additional reporting requirements in section in 5.1 for details on what components are required for specific LM79 reports, color, or distribution. Collecting spectral data allows us to work toward enabling internal metric calculations to improve the application process and future-proof applications for new metrics. Please note that the spectral data will not be listed on the QPL and is only for DLC's internal use. Next slide. Let's talk about color rendition. Color rendition describes the effects of an illuminant on the color appearance of objects by conscious or subconscious comparison with their color appearance under a reference illuminant. In other words, color rendition metrics tell you how a given light source renders colors of objects compared to a reference light source. For the color rendition requirements, we're introducing a new qualification pathway using IES TM3018 in addition to the traditional CRI qualification path. Shown here, the indoor TM30 standard qualification requirements have been set to align with the minimum color preference thresholds of the new IES TM3018 annexes. Not only are the TM30 thresholds correlated to preference, but they've been shown to have greater energy saving potential over the traditional ADCRI. This is our first step toward transitioning to using color rendition metrics that can provide more insight into product performance. It's important to note that the IES TM30 annex that recommends thresholds is only for indoor applications. That said, you'll notice that there isn't much difference in the DLC thresholds for the TM30 color rendition metrics between indoor and outdoor and high bay products. Looking at the two sets of requirements in this table for indoor and outdoor products, you can see that only one of the 3 values is different. RCH H1 is the red rendition measure. To be consistent with a new TM30 requirements option, we're also adding an R9 threshold requirement to the traditional CRI RA thresholds. Please note that while either qualification pathway can be used for compliance, both sets of values must be included in your test reports and will be listed on the QPL. Also, to accommodate the known trade-offs between efficacy and color rendition, we're including some stricter thresholds for color rendition that will enable superior performing products to unlock efficacy allowances. Allowances will be discussed later in this webinar. Next slide. Last, let's talk about color maintenance. You can think of color maintenance as a way to better understand how the color of light shifts over the product's lifetime. It's like the color equivalent of lumen maintenance. We're requiring that all indoor products, except high bay, have a color shift of less than 0.004 DUV between the 1,000 hour and 6,000 hour measurement points of a given LM80 test. All outdoor products in high bays have to have a color shift of less than 0.007 DUV between the 1,000 hour and 6,000 hour measurement points of a given LM80 test. Looking at the shift between 1,000 hours and 6,000 hours instead of 0 hours and 6,000 hours allows for the sources to undergo a common burn-in phase over the first 1,000 hours. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Leora. I will pass it on to Yao, and he will cover light distribution and discomfort glare.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the webinar so far, and glad to have the chance to introduce the light distribution and discomfort glare policy to you. So here are highlights for the version 5.0, 5.1 light distribution and discomfort glare requirements. First is the beam angle requirements for linear replacement lamps. So the DLC has removed the testing requirements for linear replacement lamps in reference housings. As a result, in luminaire light distribution requirements, including zonal lumen distribution and spacing criteria, are no longer qualification criteria for TLEDs. Instead, a beam angle requirement was introduced, and all linear replacement lamps shall demonstrate a beam angle of 140 degrees or greater. And we will discuss these requirement details in the next slide, and requirements related to reference housings will be covered in the later part of this webinar. For products in the outdoor luminaire category, BUG ratings were introduced as a new requirement. So BUG stands for backlight, uplight, and glare, and the ratings are associated with the luminaire optical performance on light trespass, sky glow, and high angle brightness control. But note that this is only a reporting requirement, but not a product qualification criterion, which will be explained in detail in the next slide as well. Lastly, the discomfort glare metric. The Unified Glare Rating, or UGR, was introduced as a qualification criterion for eligible products seeking premium classification or efficacy allowances. In version 5.1, the requirements are only applicable to eligible DLC premium products. The requirements, however, are not meant to mandate superior glare control design for all the luminaires, but to prevent highly efficacious products to exhibit excessive glare. And therefore, the criteria were set to reflect this intent. And the discomfort glare requirements will be discussed as part of the DLC premium requirements in the later part of this webinar. In addition, a low discomfort glare performance pathway for pursuing efficacy allowances was added. And this allows products designed for enhanced glare control to claim efficacy allowances and qualify for either DLC standard or premium classification. And therefore, the criteria were again set based on this intent and will be discussed later in the efficacy allowances section of this webinar. Now let's look at the detailed technical requirements for light distribution. Solar lumen distribution and spacing criteria are specifically called out as part of the light distribution requirements. However, the actual requirements, qualification criteria, and verification methods remain unchanged from version 4.4 technical requirements. And the requirements are applicable to all products except for linear replacement lamps. And the spacing criteria, the specific criteria are listed in the technical requirement tables for each primary use designation. So please refer to the technical requirement tables for the detailed zonal lumen distribution and spacing criteria requirements. Now, for linear replacement lamps, where the zonal lumen distribution and spacing criteria are no longer applicable, they need to meet the new beam angle requirement. The definition of beam angle for linear replacement lamps can be found in both the definition section and in this light distribution and discomfort glare section of the technical requirements. So please look at the definition for clarification. All linear replacement lamps will need to demonstrate a beam angle of at least 140 degrees. And in terms of QPL listing, the beam angles are to be reported on the application form and will be listed as reported data on the QPL. In addition, beam angles for parent products will be verified by the DLC using the LM79 test reports and listed as tested data on the QPL. BUG ratings for outdoor luminaires. Just to reiterate, this is only a reporting requirement, not a qualification criterion. In other words, there are no pass-fail BUG rating thresholds for a product to be listed on the QPL. And in terms of QPL listing, BUG ratings for outdoor luminaires are to be reported on the application form and will be listed as reported data on the QPL. Additionally, bug ratings for parent products will be generated by DLC using the tested IS files and listed as tested data. So these are the light distribution and discomfort glare requirements for standard products. And like I mentioned, discomfort glare requirements for premium products will be introduced again in the premium section of this webinar. And now I'm going to hand over to Dan Mellinger to introduce the version 5.0 controllability requirements.
Thank you, Yao. All right, we're going to keep moving along here. 5.1 controllability. These requirements are established to progressively build upon the controllability aspects that we discussed just a few minutes ago in 5.0. Starting with dimming, the dimming requirement, which had been indoor luminaires and retrofit kits under 5.0, that requirement extends to nearly all products under 5.1, including outdoor luminaires and retrofit kits and all replacement lamps. Again, there are some exceptions, as with 5.0. I'll cover those in the next slide. Also, 5.1 includes some expanded reporting requirements and some brand new reporting requirements relating to the controllability of products. And this is intended to better inform the specifiers and users of the qualified products list. So let's take a look at the specific details, starting with dimming under controllability. So what I've highlighted in yellow here are the changes relative to 5.0. So under 5.1, the outdoor luminaires and retrofit kits and replacement lamps must be capable of dimming. Starting with that outdoor category, and actually I should have mentioned outdoor luminaires, retrofit kits, and the Mogul screw base replacement lamps that are used in outdoor applications. So if you're familiar with this product category, the Mogul screw base HID replacement lamps can be associated with indoor applications like a high bay or outdoor application. And so those products that are qualified in the outdoor PUDs and any of the outdoor luminaires and retrofit kits must be capable of achieving continuous or stepped dimming. Now, stepped dimming is unique here to outdoor, and it is defined in the policy document, so you can take a look at that if you have questions about it. But the intent was to align with the way many of the codes and lighting ordinances treat outdoor lighting, where part night dimming is required in the form of usually just one step. So continuous dimming isn't always a requirement for outdoor applications. And then the replacement lamps, other than those outdoor Mogul screw base HIT replacement lamps, all the other replacement lamps must be capable of the continuous dimming. Now, it's important to understand how we're defining a dimmable product for 5.0 and 5.1. I would anticipate there are going to be a lot of questions about how do you dim a particular product or application, or how do you consider a product being dimmable. And the way it's defined in the policy is that a product is dimmable if it includes a dimmable driver or is capable of being dimmed by an external control signal, and it's identified as being dimmable on the product specification sheet. So it's that two-part requirement that it either has to have a dimmable driver or can be dimmed by an external control signal. And so that latter part is important for products that don't have a driver, like a type B TLED. All of the products, regardless of whether it has a dimmable driver or can be dimmed by an external control signal, all of those products have to be indicated as being dimmable on its product specification sheet. So this is a manufacturer asserted claim. There is no test that is being verified for these dimming capabilities. The method evaluation is verifying that the capability is identified clearly on the product specification sheet. All right, next slide, Axel. Staying within controllability, we're going to move on to integral control. This was an optional reporting metric under 4.4 standard. It was required under 4.4 premium as well as 5.0 premium. This will become a mandatory reporting requirement for all products under 5.1, both standard and premium. Every product will be required to report on integral control capabilities. But similar to the bug ratings that Yao was just discussing, this is not a performance threshold. There's no pass or fail. This is a mandatory reporting requirement. And if the product has no option for integral controls, that is one of the acceptable reported elements from a manufacturer, that there could be no or none for integral control sensors or integral control capabilities. So this becomes a requirement under 5.1. In addition, the level of detail that's being reported is much richer than what was provided under 4.4 and 5.0. Previously, it was just a yes or no indication that the product could be ordered with integral controls. Under 5.1, that information expands to the specific type of integral control sensors, so things like occupancy sensors or daylight sensors, integral control capabilities, whether or not the product has the capability to accommodate high-end trim, provide energy monitoring, or in the case of a linear lamp, is it a networkable replacement lamp? And if the manufacturer claims that the product has luminaire level lighting controls, LLC, as qualified through the network lighting control qualified products list, there's the option to provide the model name of that specific LLC capability. Similar to dimming, the evaluation of these manufacturer claims will occur through the product specification sheet, but additionally, the information about integral controls can be provided on supplemental literature. So whereas dimming had to be very clearly on the product specification sheet, information about the integral control capability can be provided through supplemental literature. And then wrapping up controllability under 5.1, we're going to talk about a new reported element, the control communication. So for the products that are required to be dimmable, which is most everything under 5.1, there will be a requirement to report the communication protocols that are available on the product in both wired and wireless options. The intent of this reported element is to aid product specification and inform users of the QPL about the compatibility with control systems. Similar to integral controls, the evaluation of this claimed capability would occur through the product specification sheet or supplemental literature. All right, so let's move on to 5.1 premium. The efficacy and dimming requirements are unchanged relative to 5.0, as shown in the first two bullets here. So again, efficacy is a flat 15 lumen per watt increase, and every product must be capable of continuous dimming. In the shaded green area are the new elements to premium under 5.1. The two aspects being a chromaticity requirement and discomfort glare. We'll talk through those in detail over the next couple of slides. So starting with the first few elements of 5.1 premium, efficacy and controllability I just mentioned. The chromaticity element is a requirement for 5.1 premium, and it's similar to the chromaticity requirement that Leora discussed earlier for 5.1 standard, but premium requires tighter bins across the full range of CCTs. So it's a 4-step quadrangle instead of the 7-step requirement that exists for DLC standard. And next I'm going to turn it over to Leora to cover the discomfort glare requirements under 5.1 premium.
Thanks, Dan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Yao did an excellent job of introducing UGR, but I wanted to give you a little bit more texture here. Discomfort glare is defined as glare that causes discomfort without necessarily limiting the vision of objects. To quantify discomfort glare, DLC is using the CIE Unified Glaring Metric, or UGR. UGR values typically range from 10 to 30, where a value of 10 is imperceptible in terms of glare perception, and a value of 30 is uncomfortable. 3 UGR units represent a step change in acceptability in the glare criteria. You can see the range of glare criteria in this table on the slide. Glare control is also an important non-energy benefit that has an incremental dollar value. PNNL commissioned a study with Sarah to investigate the value of advanced LED features of commercial linear luminaires, among others. Using non-energy benefit measurement techniques, they found that glare control had the highest relative ranking among lighting designers and business owners, even if the products were less efficient. You'll see a link to the study here if you'd like to know more information. Next slide. So the UGR requirements that we have here, again, are only applicable for premium applications and only for certain PUDs. The UGR requirements in 5.1 are maximum values and only apply to trophers, linear ambience, low bays, and high bay PUDs. So let's look at an example. A UGR value of less than 22, which is the requirement for trophers and linear ambient fixtures, corresponds to a discomfort glare rating of just acceptable or better. How do we calculate UGR? We use the procedure specified in CIE 190-2010. As you can see, DLC has specified the requirements for room size, surface reflectances, and fixture spacing for the UGR evaluation. We have benchmarked software, including Photometric Toolbox 32, version 2.7 against the CIE standard, and found this software package to be accurate. So DLC will be using Photometric Toolbox 32, version 2.7 or later in its analyses, and will also be using it to evaluate applications. Please refer to the additional reporting section in version 5.1 for more requirements and guidance for IES files as they relate to UGR. One important note that I want to mention here, the UGR requirements do not have any additional tolerances. Each maximum requirement for UGR within each PUD already includes a buffer within the 3-step change in acceptability. This is true here and in the allowance sections. For those wishing to unlock efficacy allowances, there are more stringent UGR requirements later. We'll be discussing them soon. Thank you. I am set.
Thanks, Leora. Okay, we will cover a little bit of the additional reporting guidelines as Leora mentioned, and it is relevant to the glare and light distribution requirements as well as the spectral quality requirements and a bit more. So this is what we want to cover. It includes new requirements that will require more complete information to be included in LM79 test reports that may not have been required in previous versions of the technical requirements. And these are referred to in version 5.1 as full LM79/color or full LM79/distribution reports. And so these are defined within the document. I strongly encourage you to go into the document and see those definitions. We've included a bit of them here again, so they would be in the slides and be a resource for you, but please keep in mind they're more completely defined within the policy document. Within this section, we're also proposing new compliance requirements related to TM21 and its Addendum B to address concerns around projected lumen maintenance claims. And responding to comments we received in draft 2, we are now including an exception to use uneven intervals where testing was initiated prior to March 31st, 2015. Okay, to meet the spectral quality requirements, color-specific test reports are generally referred to as full LM79 color reports, and they shall include the items listed here. They include the tested electrical characteristics and then more specific color requirements. So I won't read through these here. Again, please take a look at the document for full information on what is included in those full LM79 color reports. Similarly, the distribution-specific test reports are referred to in version 5.1 as full LM79/distribution reports. And again, these should include included tested electrical characteristics and the luminous intensity distribution array, along with the IES file based on the test data. Specific requirements for those IES files are called out in the policy. However, these are not new elements within the IES files, but mostly the information that is often omitted or incorrectly in the IES file submission. So our goal there was to really clarify and be very detailed about what's required there. Again, there's more in the document, especially that some additional guidance on luminous dimensions for different fixture types, which is important for calculating the luminaire's UGR values. So also new in version 5.1, long-term maintenance, lumen maintenance projections will be accepted only if fully compliant with TM2111 and its addendum B. As such, a complete and accurate copy of the 2018 Energy Star TM21 calculator will be required for submission. If you don't know where this is, it is linked in the document, the policy document, and the technical requirements tables. So this also means that we are eliminating the provisions for complying with lumen maintenance requirements for projection endpoints less than 50,000 hours. LM80 sets will need to project to 50,000 hours via TM21 rules alone in order to demonstrate compliance with the L70 lumen maintenance requirement. Again, as I mentioned, this was included in draft 2, but we received a number of comments recommending adding an exception for uneven interval testing and reporting for TM20 projections, drawing from an LM80 report initiated prior to March 31st, 2015. This is 1 year after the introduction of even intervals in Addendum A to TM21. So again, to be clear here, the uneven testing intervals, as long as that testing was initiated prior to that date in 2015, March 31, these are allowed. And these cases should use the 2016 version of the Energy Star TM21 calculator. Okay, moving on to allowances in version 5.1. As with previous versions of the technical requirements, the version 5.1 revision includes allowances to the minimum efficacy requirements. This is because it is not the DLC's intent to drive lighting away from features that contribute to the overall quality of light at the expense of efficacy. So things that have color allowances are, efficacy allowances are things like color and glare. We know that quality must go hand in hand with efficacy if long-term energy savings are to be realized from LED lighting. So, as such, the DLC will grant allowances to efficacy requirements applicable to both tested and reported performance values. With version 5.1, the changes to the allowances include simplified CCT allowances, 2 tiers of allowances for better color rendering performance, and we've also included allowances for improved discomfort glare. Finally, we've also increased the maximum allowance to 15%. So the first update to allowances under version 5.1 is simplifying those CCT allowances. We are removing the ability to get 3% for CCT less than 3000 K, but keeping the 5% available for CCTs less than 2700 K. So you can see there on the screen, the allowance under 4.4 is 3% for those 3000 K products. We're just removing that and just keeping the 2700 K allowances. While we simplified those CCT allowances, we added some more detail to color rendering. And these allowances here mimic the requirements for color rendition in the standard requirements, but they are intentionally more strict to get the allowances. So in version 4.4, an indoor product can get 5% for having at least 90 CRI, and we are adding an equivalent value measuring with TM30 in version 5.1. We are also adding a higher allowance of 10% if the product uses TM30 and achieves higher color rendition. In addition, with version 5.1, we are also allowing 5% efficacy allowance for outdoor products that achieve 80 CRI. And again, there's also an equivalent value if measuring with TM30. Next, we have added the ability to get another 10% for good glare performance. Just like Leora explained a little bit earlier, there are 4 different general applications: troffers, linear ambience, low bays, and high bays, each with different UGR thresholds. So if any of these general applications achieve the UGR thresholds, which are more strict than the premium requirements, they are eligible to lower the minimum efficacy by 10%. And all the analysis or the evaluation criteria for UGR for allowances is the same with premium, and they're noted in that few bullets at the bottom of the screen here. If you are familiar with our current allowances, there is a maximum 5% allowed under version 4.4. With version 5.1, as you can imagine, there are many more allowances and greater allowances to achieve under version 5.1. But we have added a maximum allowance of 15%. As you can see, and looking at the previous tables, the maximum or the allowances add up to 20%, but again, we capped this at 15%. And this would allow a product with true high quality of light to get some portion of each allowance type available. For example, if you had a troffer that has a low CCT at 2700 degrees Kelvin, a CRI of 90, and an R9 of at least 50, and a UGR less than 16, then it could claim 5% from each. Even though that UGR is worth 10, we can say that it's going to claim 5% from each, not the total 20, but it could claim it will only have to meet a minimum efficacy requirement 15% lower than listed in the applicable requirement, whether standard or premium. Similarly, with new requirements comes new tolerances, specifically for color rendering, color maintenance, and UGR. I've highlighted those here, but it's important to call out that UGR has no allowance here. So we just want to call that out, that it is, in fact, none. And all applicable existing tolerances are still in place, like those for light output, efficacy, and CCT. Updates include color rendering, color maintenance, and there's also a mention of beam angles for linear replacement lamps, also known as TLEDs, kind of abbreviated there. Again, we're going to go over that in a little bit. So please take a look at the technical requirements for full information on tolerances. And finally, we receive questions fairly often, and I hope we can be clear that there is a difference between allowances and tolerances. Allowances are granted to offset potential efficacy trade-offs due to enhanced quality features like high color rendition or improved discomfort glare performance. Tolerances are intended to account for all the testing variation, rounding, and significant digits that every product goes through. So every single product is eligible for a tolerance and uses it. It's just those products that are exhibiting enhanced performance that can get those allowances to meet a lower efficacy requirement. Okay, I'm going to pass it on to Bernadette Boudreau, and she is going to cover reference housings and the manufacturer guidance, manufacturer and industry guidance sections.
Okay, thanks, Axel. I appreciate it. So moving on to our reference housing topics. When it comes to retrofit kits, mogul screw-based replacements for HIDs, and G24Q-based replacement lamps for CFLs, DLC will continue to use the current 4.4 reference housing testing policy, where you are required to test in an approved, DLC-approved housing. However, to address concerns that stakeholders have had with the availability of these reference housings, DLC will periodically review our sources to ensure that these listings are publicly available, and also add additional sources when we found that there's limited availability in these sources. We also will continue to have the availability of the option B pathway, where submitters can offer to add an additional equivalent to our DLC pre-approved list. So that is the same policy as 4.4 that will remain in place for this category. And go ahead and advance, Axel. This policy for 5.0 will also remain in place for linear replacement lamps and 2G11 based replacement lamps for CFLs, TLEDs as they are commonly known. So for this category for 5.0, 4.4 reference housing policy will remain in place. However, there will be a change to this reference housing policy with a beam angle requirement in 5.1. Next slide, Axel. For 5.1, when it comes to linear replacement lamps and 2G11 based replacement lamps for CFLs, we have decided to remove the reference housing testing requirements for these product types. Go ahead and advance, Axel. We have replaced this reference housing requirement with a bare lamp efficacy and bare lamp beam angle requirement. Those requirements are listed here, as well as the initial light output requirements based on the category general application that you're applying for. We will be calculating the bare lamp beam angle requirement based on your IES LM79 test. So once again, for this category in 5.0, we will keep the current 4.4 reference housing policy, but in 5.1, these products will have to meet a new requirement, which is the bare lamp beam angle requirement. Next slide, Axel. I'll now go into the manufacturer and industry guidance. This is a supplemental document that we've released along with our requirement or technical requirement documents that give manufacturers and other industry stakeholders more detail on how these new requirements are affecting the application process and updating process. I encourage everyone to take a look at that. It gives a lot of more detail on the steps and things that will be needed to update a product or submit a new application, and the different milestones that can affect those different submissions. This guidance is located on the DLC website, on the SSL V5 transition page, and on other locations throughout the website. Go ahead, Axel. This is a snapshot of our full V5 timeline. I'm not going to go into all the detail right now because I will break out each of the timelines for version 5.0 and 5.1 in more detail. Next slide, Axel. One key milestone within this version 5 timeline is the auto update from version 4.4 to 5.0. On March 30th, DLC will automatically transition all products whose reported data meets the efficacy and dimming requirements from version 4.4 to 5.0. Manufacturers will not have to take any action for this update. This will be automatically done on the QPL. This is going to allow our utility members to be able to reap the benefits of our new 5.0 requirements sooner than it was projected or displayed in our previous drafts. In addition, one change that we've made to the transition from version 4.4 to 5.0, is that any child product will be allowed to stay listed even if the parent product does not meet the requirements, as long as the data for that child product still meets the version 5.0 requirements. We have done this so that the update process is less disruptive to the delisting of products, as full families will not be delisted based on the fact that a parent does not meet the requirements. So your child products will be able to remain on the QPL even if a parent is no longer eligible. Again, manufacturers will not have to take any action for these child products to be updated. Any transition of classification, such as transitions from V4.4 premium to 5.0 standard, would not happen until the version 4.4 delist date on December 31st of 2020. And I'll go into more detail on that in a later slide. Next slide, Axel. We also have a new process for updating 4.4 listed products reported data. Due to the release of the V5 auto update process, we are reviewing update applications and changes to reported data with a little more scrutiny. To update your product performance to an improved efficacy value, manufacturers will need to submit an explanation of what has changed in the product to gain that improved efficacy, and a new LM79 sphere test for the worst case efficacy models. Previously, only an explanation was required when there were no updates to parent products within the family. However, we have modified this policy to reduce any potential for gaming of updates to product performance to comply with the new version 5.0 standards that will be included in the auto updating process. Any update applications that require a review of any test reports, such as LM79s, will require a fee consistent with the number of LM79s that will be reported or evaluated during these updates. Next slide. Regarding notifications on the QPL and the QPL updates, we encourage all manufacturers to keep all of their contact information in their manufacturer account up to date in the DLC application portal. This contact information can be updated via the account tab in the DLC application portal, or other manufacturer account administrator changes can be done by contacting the DLC. Go ahead and advance, Axel. There will be 4 different updates to the QPL, and during each one of these updates, there will be a notification to the manufacturer's account on how all of the listed products will be affected by these updates. These updates will include cutoffs for when version 4.4 applications are no longer accepted, as well as for when version 5.0 applications are accepted. So please ensure that you've kept these manufacturer accounts up to date, as you should have received one notification already as of today. Next slide. I am now going to go into more detail on the version 5.0 timeline. As Axel has stated, we already have released the version 5.0 and 5.1 documents on February 18th. On March 30th, version 4.4 products that meet the version 5.0 requirements will auto update to version 5.0 as previously described. All of that information, once again, will be distributed to your manufacturer's accounts, and that information will detail whether or not a product has met the version 5.0 requirements or not. And if it does not meet the requirements, it will be listed on whether or not it did not meet due to efficacy or dimming requirements with 5.0. On May 31st, we are setting that as the last date to submit any new version 4.4 applications or updates to products within the 4.4 technical specifications. On July 1st, that is going to be the first date to submit version 5.1 applications. And I will go through more on the version 5.1 process in a few more slides. October 31st is the last date to submit new version 5.0 applications or applications to update products from version 4.4 to version 5.0 if they are not already included in an auto update. And then lastly, on December 31st, version 4.4 products that do not meet the version 5.0 requirements will be delisted or demoted if it in the case of version 4.4 premium products. And I will go further into these details in the upcoming slides. I want to, once again, I know that these are a lot of dates, but we have all of these dates in a lot of the detail that I am describing. It's very explicitly described in the manufacturer guidance. So I encourage you guys to look at that document. Next slide. I'm sorry, next advance. I want to talk about grace periods here. These arrows or lines describe grace periods for application submissions. Manufacturers will be able to continue to submit products for qualification under the version 4.4 technical requirements through May 31st. However, we do have detail in the manufacturer's guidance on when these applications must undergo a complete review before those applications will be closed out. As well, manufacturers may submit version 5.0 update applications for products that do not meet version 5.0 requirements based on their currently listed information. It started on February 18th. Those version 5.0 applications must be received by October 31st. And there's more information in the guidance document on when those submitted applications must be fully reviewed in order to be prepared for the QPL updates that are coming up in December 31st. Next slide. Go ahead and advance, Axel. This summary table is located in the manufacturer's guidance. It has taken the timeline that I just described in the last slide and placed it in a table format and includes all of those dates, including some additional dates that may be important. One date that I want to highlight to everyone is today's date, February 20th. Prior to this webinar or slightly after this webinar, you should all be receiving individual outreach noting the status of your version 4.4 products relative to 5.0, as I described in the previous slides. This will include information on whether or not your products met the 5.0 requirements based on efficacy and dimming. Next slide, Axel. This slide is giving more detail regarding updates and delistings. Delistings for 5.0, as previously stated, will be based on the new efficacy requirements and the dimming requirements where applicable. Version 4.4 standard products that meet version 4.4 premium and 5.0 standard products that meet 5.0 premium will be auto updated on March 30th of 2020. However, if products are currently listed as version 4.4 standard or premium and do not meet the version 5.0 requirements, those products will remain on the QPL until December 31st of 2020, unless you update those products to version 5.0. If you are a version 4.4 premium product and you do not meet the version 5.0 premium requirements, but do meet the version 5.0 standard, you will be automatically downgraded to that 5.0 standard as of December 31st of 2020. We want to keep in mind that any updates to these version 4.4 products can be done via an efficacy update application or dimming update application to ensure your products meet these new requirements. And all applicable fees for those updates will be charged based on the fee schedule that I'm going to describe later on in the presentation. Next slide. Now I will go into more detail on the version 5.1 timelines. As of July 1st, 2020, version 5.1 new product applications will be accepted. Manufacturers may continue to submit products for qualification under version 5.0 through October 31st of 2020. Go ahead and advance, Axel. That means that all products submitted for qualification on or after November 1st of 2020 will be subject to all of the version 5.1 technical requirements. On December 31st of 2020, any products that do not meet the 5.1 efficacy and dimming requirements as described previously will be delisted. Note, there will be no automatic update of products from version 5.1. Every product that a manufacturer wishes to update to 5.1 must be done via an update application. That is different, of course, from what occurred from version 4.4 to 5.0. All currently qualified products must be updated to meet the version 5.1 technical requirements, or they will be delisted from the QPL at the end of the version 5.1 grace period on December 31st of 2021. Go ahead and advance, Axel. This October 15th date is a date of when you are updating a version 5.0 product to version 5.1. All your update applications must be submitted by this October 15th of 2021 date. And then once again, go ahead and advance. All products must meet the 5.1 technical requirements as of December 31st of 2021. Within the manufacturer's guidance, there is additional detail on when certain applications such as updates must be processed by in order to prepare for the December 31st delisting period. Next slide, next advance. Once again, these are the grace periods for submitting 4.4 products that are being updated to 5.1, 5.0 products that are being updated to 5.1, and as you see, 5.1 applications can start to be submitted as early as July 1st, but will continue to be accepted through December 31st of 2021. There's more explicit detail, once again, in the manufacturer's guidance documents. Please reference that document for more information. Next slide. And again, these tables are also in the manufacturer's guidance. It takes these timelines and puts it into more of a table format, so it may be easier for you to reference the different milestones associated with 5.1. Next slide. As far as application process timing, version 4.4 and version 5.0 applications will have no change in the current timing. So the current version 4.4 review timing that is on the website now will also apply to version 5.0, and there is no change in that review timing or application processing timing. Next advance. When it comes to version 5.1, there will be an extension in the review time for those applications due to the additional requirements that have been added to version 5.1. Based on the application type, there are different review or application processing timelines. Please take reference of those. These will be listed on the DLC website on the review timelines tab, where you can see the review timelines for version 4.4 and 5 applications, and as well the new timelines for version 5.1 applications. Next slide, Axel. In regards to fees, go ahead and advance. The current fee model will remain in place for version 5. What that means is the way that applications are billed based on test reports has not changed. I will address all of the fees that will change for version 5.1, but at a certain time frame, excuse me, but any fees not addressed in this presentation have not changed. Those are fees such as specialty fees and dimming fees. Application fees are going to be calculated based on the number of ITRs, independent test reports, and the number of additional family members. For independent test reports, LM79s, LED ISTMTs, and driver ISTMTs are considered to be independent test reports. There will be no fees associated with any evaluation of IES files. Advance, Axel. As of July 1st of 2020, there will be an update to the fees, not the fee model, but the actual fees charged. These fees will be adjusted based on when the application is invoiced. I want to highlight that because this is not based on when the application is submitted. It is based on when the application is invoiced. So that would be following an initial review on a new application or after the information for an update application has been reviewed. These fees have been adjusted accordingly. For a single product application, the fee was initially $500. That fee has now been increased to $750. For family grouping applications and the charge for independent test reports, as I've described above, that initial fee of $500, that previous fee of $500 has now been reduced to $375. That for family groupings, any additional product family members that are added to a family application, that fee is now $30 versus the original $25 fee. For private labels, when it comes to the independent test reports, the fee has now been increased from $250 to now $325. And the private label additional product family member has also been increased as the family grouping product family member fee from $25 to $30. We understand that there are going to be additional tests that are going to be required in applications, especially for 5.1, and we've adjusted these fees to account for any additional tests and any additional review that is going to be incurred by these additional requirements. Next slide. As I've stated, I encourage you guys to look into more detail on the manufacturer and industry guidance. To the right, I've listed all of the information that is detailed in that document. We spent a lot of time trying to anticipate any questions and give guidance on how you can qualify new products, update new products, and how your products are affected by any auto updating that is going to occur. We've also given some guidance on testing, what type of testing will be required for 5.1 applications, and more generalized guidance regarding some of the more detailed technical requirements on what may be required within testing for 5.0 products that are being submitted. We also have included what I've discussed regarding application fee changes and impacts to our processing timeframes due to the new 5.1 application requirements. So please take a look at that guidance to get more detail on grace periods, auto updating, and any additional 5.0 and 5.1 timeline updates. Thank you guys so much for participating in the webinar, and I'll hand it over to Axel for our question and answer.
Thank you, Bernadette. Okay, we do have time for question and answer, so I'll give you a quick reminder of how we're planning this. Our team has been hard at work behind the scenes answering questions that have come in. They've just glancing through the question pane now, it looks like a good chunk of them have already been answered, but what you can't see is a document that we've been working on to highlight some of the questions that would be good to read out loud. And so that's what we're going to do. If you just give me a minute, I'm going to take a look at that document and then start to read the questions and call on some of our subject matter experts to answer those questions. If you think of any more questions, feel free to enter them in the question pane as we go. We'll get through as many as we can, but if we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you after the webinar. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at the file. And so I think our first question is to define dimmable. And Dan Mellinger, can you help us clearly define dimmable?
Sure. So as we've defined it in the policy document, this definition is shown in both the 5.0 and the 5.1 policy documents. A dimmable product is one that includes a dimmable driver and or is capable of being dimmed by an external control signal and is identified as dimmable on the product specification sheet. So this question that was received was asking specifically about the dimming leads and whether or not those dimming leads are actually connected to a control signal does not dictate whether or not that product is dimmable. Again, that's an installation that happens in the field and is really outside the scope of the qualified products list. It's about the capability of that product of being dimmed if the customer so chooses.
Great, thank you, Dan. Okay, the next question I see, are spectral quality requirements for all luminaires or only the premium category? I'll answer it quickly right away, but I want to zoom back up to the requirements to be sure that everyone's clear on this. There are spectral quality requirements for standard DLC listing, though there are some extra premium requirements. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to pause my screen share just to save you from flashing all the way through the presentation again, and hopefully I can get there pretty quickly. But what I'm going to do is get to the standard requirements. Okay, did I do that correctly? Are you seeing the 5.1 spectral quality requirements?
Yes.
Thank you, yes. Okay, so here are the requirements for spectral quality, and this is for DLC standards. So there are chromaticity, there's a reporting requirement for spectral power distribution, there's color rendition requirements for spectral quality under standard as well. And then there's also color maintenance. And so what I'm going to do now, those are the standard requirements. What I'll do now is zoom back down to DLC Premium and show you those requirements. Okay, here we are with the chromaticity requirements of DLC Premium. So it is a tighter tolerance or acceptability, if you will, of the CCTs. So it's the same range of CCT that is allowed, 2200 Kelvin to 65, but you must meet a 4-step quadrangle with DLC Premium. Okay, I'm gonna look out for the next question. Will DLC require that test labs need to report the UGR values on test reports, or will DLC use provided IES files to determine compliance with UGR? Leora, are you able to take that one?
I am. The latter is correct. It's a great question. We will use the submitted IES files and open them in Photometric Toolbox 32, version 2.7 or later, to see if they comply with our UGR requirements. So there's no requirement for this to be in the test report. We will calculate it independently. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay. Next one is another dimming question. Is dimming capability required for both standard and premium in version 5.1? Dan?
There's actually a few questions that came in asking for clarification around this, so I think I'll step through the 4 scenarios. For 5.0 standard, it's continuous. The dimming requirement is continuous for indoor luminaires and retrofit kits with some exceptions. Then the 5.0 premium, the requirement is continuous for all products, no exceptions. Under 5.1 standard, it's much more nuanced. So for outdoor luminaires, retrofit kits, and the mogul-based lamps, it's continuous or stepped. And the requirement is continuous for everything else. And then both of those have some exceptions. And so this is the most confusing one, Axel. I wonder if you could pull up the slide, which was slide number 35.
Okay, give me a second and I should be able to get there.
Sure. And then finally for 5.1 premium, again, just like 5.0, it's continuous for all with no exceptions. The exceptions are noted in the italicized letters here. So for indoor, it's case lighting and specialty hazardous. For outdoor, it is landscape accent flood, specialty sports flood, specialty tunnel, and specialty hazardous. Also, some questions came in asking for clarification around the mogul-based HID replacement lamps, since it depends on whether or not they're in an outdoor or indoor PUD. So for 5.0, there's no dimming requirement for the mogul screw-based HID replacement lamps. But under 5.1, if these products are qualified in a high bay PUD, the requirement is continuous. And if they're in any of the outdoor PUDs, they can be continuous or stepped, a little more nuanced for the HID replacement lamps. Axel, there's a couple more questions here about controllability. You want me to just hit on all of these while I'm talking?
Sure.
So a question came in about a family. This is not dimming, but this is about controllability. So if a family has different integral sensors, is a different application needed for each sensor type? And the answer is no, although I noted that incorrectly. The answer is no. Different sensors can be used across the family and listed under that one family listing as long as the dimming type does not change. So a change in dimming type does have implications on the family qualification, but integral control sensors does not. We intentionally structured it that way so that the listing of products didn't greatly expand due to all the different variations of integral sensors and integral capabilities. And in order for users to seek the meaningful information they're after, these reported metrics about integral sensors, capabilities, control communication, those will be searchable and filterable on the QPL, but they don't drive unique separate product listings on the QPL. And then the last one I'll hit here on controllability, a number of questions about the dimming of TLEDs, about how that is possible or lack of infrastructure in the field. All valid points. The way that we see TLED dimming being accomplished could be a variety of fashions. It could be through a dimmable fluorescent ballast. Admittedly, those are not common in the field. There are some of them out there, but a type A TLED that would be compatible, that could be dimmed through a dimmable fluorescent ballast would comply. TLEDs could achieve dimming through a wireless signal, so either coming from a wireless wall dimmer or something like a wireless daylight photocell sending a signal to the lamp to dim. Type C drivers, of course, many of them already are dimmable, and a TLED could even achieve dimming through phase cut.
Okay, Thanks, Dan. So I saw one come in that I think I meant to cover, and we had communicated this via email, but I failed to mention in the webinar that those of you who had attended previous drafts or were involved in our draft process, we had proposed Flickr requirements in drafts 1 and 2. And based on the comments we received and the research and kind of outreach that we did, we decided to postpone Flickr in version 5.0 and 5.1, though it's still very much on the forefront of our minds, and we do intend to continue our Flickr work. One thing that clearly held us back was the lack of an IES ANSI document that was defining Flickr and providing test methods. So we wanted that to be published, but so we will be looking to continue our work on Flickr in the future. Okay. Next question I see, can you confirm that allowances apply both to standard and premium? And that is true. If you meet all the premium requirements and you qualify for those allowances that we presented here and exist in the policy document, you are allowed that allowance to efficacy. You can still take a maximum of 15% off of either the standard minimum efficacy requirement or that premium minimum efficacy requirement that is 15 points higher than standard. There's another question here on allowances. If we submit a product trying to use the glare allowance, does the tolerance then apply to that lowered metric? So well, I'll first say that there is no tolerance for the UGR values. So to meet, you must meet the UGR values absolutely to qualify for the glare allowance. But I think maybe what the question is asking is if you can take an allowance and a tolerance together, and that is true. You can take say a 5% allowance for efficacy and an additional 3% for tolerance, and that would be your effective minimum efficacy. And of course, there are tolerances that apply to other aspects of testing beyond efficacy, but you are able to take an allowance and a tolerance to efficacy. Okay, moving along, here's one in the manufacturer and industry guidance section. Can I update products from 4.4 to 5.1? Bernadette, can you help us with that one?
Yes, you can definitely update products directly from 4.4 to 5.1, and those options are available once 5.1 applications are open.
Okay. Next question there, if we submit an application that meets 5.0, later we need to submit an additional application again for 5.1, or just submit reports to show the product that passed 5.1 will also pass past 5.0 will also pass 5.1.
So yes, if you submit an update application to update your product to version 5.0, you will have to submit a separate application to update your product to 5.1 to ensure that you've included the additional reports and requirements that are now required in 5.1. We will not be able to accept any of that 5.1 information until the 5.1 applications are open.
Okay. Bernadette, can you please confirm there's no charge for the auto update from 4.4 to 5.0?
That is correct. There is no charge for the auto update that occurs between version 4.4 and 5.0. and no action that any manufacturers need to take for that update.
Great, thank you. Okay, I see that as I was talking through allowances, it spurred a couple more questions. There's a question about the difference between allowances and tolerances. And so allowances are granted to offset potential efficacy trade-offs due to enhanced quality features like high color rendition or glare control. It is our understanding that if a luminaire has, you know, a nice optical control or a nice lens on it that reduces the glare of the product, that the luminaire's efficacy will be impacted. And so that 10% allowed for glare, 10% to efficacy allowed for glare is to account for that product that has effectively taken a hit to the efficacy in order to have better glare performance. On the other hand, tolerances are intended to account for all testing variation, rounding, and significant digits. And so this is really the variability that might happen between test lab technicians or testing labs as a whole. This is just to know that when a product is tested, it's not absolutely standardized every single time. And so that's what tolerances are for. They are, well, there's a question about how they are applied. So I'm going to jump back up to the tolerances section, but allowances are applied to the minimum efficacy requirements. And so if you have a minimum requirement of 100 lumens per watt and you successfully apply for a 10% glare allowance, your new minimum efficacy that the product needs to achieve for listing would be 90 lumens per watt. That's 10% lower than the baseline 100 lumens per watt. Here is the table of tolerances again. You can see that efficacy is allowed a 3% tolerance. So that is applied in the same way. If the base requirement for efficacy is 100 lumens per watt, and you're not applying for any allowances, the 3% would then make your effective minimum efficacy 97 lumens per watt. However, not every tolerance is a percentage. You can see that for minimum color rendering, you have a -1 point for color rendition metrics, unless it is CSH1, then it is a percent. Then color maintenance has its own kind of tolerance. So I encourage you to kind of take a look at the tolerances listed in the technical requirements tables to get a better understanding of how tolerances apply. Okay, let's scroll back up and see. Just keep in mind, as you're entering questions, our team is still finding the best ones to read aloud if they have not been answered in text. So give us a moment and we'll take a look at some more questions. Okay, I think this one's for Leora. This is someone that was comparing the UGR values in draft 2 to what they are presented in the final policy. Why did the UGR requirement for high bays go from 25 in the draft 2 to 28 in this final release?
Thanks, Axel. We had a similar question for troughers or linear ambient, so I can answer both. So in the draft, the UGR criterion values that were given, for example, for high bays was 25 with a tolerance of 1. So again, remembering that within each step change, each UGR value, you have essentially 3 points within a step. So for high bays, the acceptable, the range for high bays is less than 27, is less than 28. So that means that for high bays, you could have a value that is between 25 and 27.9, and that is in the same UGR step. So rather than having an effective UGR criterion value, including the tolerance of 26, we essentially were more lenient and made it 27.9 to account for testing differences in the IES file, but the same meaning is there. So as long as you are at 27.9 or lower for high bay, you comply. The same for troffers or linear ambient. As long as you are less than, you are 21.9 or less, you again are in the same step range as 19 up to 22.
Okay, thanks. Let's continue on with light distribution topic. Is bug only required for each unique distribution offered?
So I'll take that one. This is
Okay.
Yao. And bug rating is required for all products in terms of reporting on the application form. And only for the parents for those unique, for each unique distribution will be calculated by the DLC and listed on the QPL as tested data.
Okay, thank you. Do you see the next question there, Yao? Is
Yes.
the 5 degree by 22.5 degree a minimum requirement, meaning you can measure and report more granular angular measurements?
So I think this is referring to the luminance distribution data or the candela array in the IES file, and the answer is yes. For general wide distribution, smooth distribution type of luminaires, 5 degree vertical and 22.5 degree horizontal is the minimum requirement, but you can always be more granular. And also, if the distribution is not an even and smooth distribution, then definitely the resolution will have to be much more granular than 5 degree vertical and 22.5 degree horizontal.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to jump back to a glare and spectral quality relating to a standard and premium question. The question is, are both glare and spectral quality different for premium and standard, or just glare for premium? So I reviewed the color requirements. There are most base color requirements, spectral quality requirements are for standard. There is a more strict chromaticity requirement for DLC premium. And with glare, through UGR, there is no standard DLC standard requirement for UGR, only in DLC premium, or if there is a product seeking an efficacy allowance. But to just meet the bare requirements of DLC premium, glare is not required. UGR is not required to meet any thresholds. Okay. There's a controllability question, and I see Dan has answered it, so I'll go ahead and read the question and the answer. If a product is universal, but only dimmable for one input voltage, is that compliant? And yes, that would comply.
Actually, there was a question here about premium that I can address. It's a question about if the 4-step CCT requirement and the UGR requirements in the premium category under 5.1 apply to outdoor products. So the chromaticity requirement, the 4-step CCT, does apply to outdoor products, but UGR, the discomfort glare requirement, only applies to certain indoor product categories that we had on the slide earlier. So those were the troffers, linear ambient, low bay, and high bay. there are no discomfort glare requirements for outdoor.
Great, thank you. Thanks for catching that one.
Although, actually, I might need to correct myself. I was just verifying the chromaticity requirement. This, our color expert isn't on the webinar today, so some of us are filling in here. I'm looking back at slide 39 for premium, and the 4-step chromaticity requirement applies to indoor products except high bay. So I need to correct my answer that neither the 4-step CCT requirement nor the Discomfort Glare UGR requirement apply to outdoor.
Okay, thanks. Okay, got a couple more for manufacturer and industry guidance. If a parent does not meet version 5.0 requirements, but the children do, the children remain on the QPL. In order for the children to remain on the QPL against 5.1, do we need to provide new test data, or if we have data from the no longer passing parent model to cover the new metrics, can that be used? Bernadette?
Yes, I'm here. I think I'm getting the full question here, but essentially what is going to be evaluated when it comes to the auto update is the rated information that is currently provided on the child product. So we will not be evaluating the parent data to evaluate any of the child products. The parent data, the parent products will be evaluated based on any tested and reported data, and the child products will only be evaluated based on the child data that is currently listed on the QPL for those products.
Thank you. There's a couple more here for you. If I just want to update the driver to dimmable, same driver series, just a dimmable version, what test report do I need to submit?
There's no test report that you would need to submit. You simply need to submit, unless you are applying for premium. If you are applying for premium, there may be a driver ISTMT report that may be required. However, if you are just updating the dimmability of the driver, you would simply submit an update application for that.
Gotcha. What are the dates the auto updates from version 4.4 to 5.0 will occur? Will it only be once on March 31st?
So the first update from version 4.4 to 5.0 will occur on March 30th. However, there will be subsequent updates to the QPL during delisting periods and when there are cutoffs for when applications are no longer accepted. And those details are outlined in a lot of detail in the manufacturer's guidance under the auto updating section of that guidance. I encourage all participants to read through that guidance to get more details on what is actually occurring during those updates and what level or what date of the QPL will be evaluated during those updates.
Okay. For updating to 5.1, what if a product listed under 4.4 meets the 5.1 requirements, but the originally submitted test reports do not contain all of the needed information? Are update reports required, or would providing SPDX files, for instance, be sufficient?
So due to the new full LM79 requirements that Axel discussed, you would be required to submit a full LM79 report, not just the SPDX documents.
Okay.
I believe that answered the question. I hope that answered it.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. think we've tackled most of the highlighted ones that we thought were appropriate for to read out loud, and if it would be useful for everyone to hear. Though I understand there may be some more questions coming in. I'm reading a chat. Maybe we can keep the webinar open to finish answering some individual questions. I think that's fine. And I think what that means is that we will still be working through the text questions, but we won't be reading them aloud, and that will allow us to answer any outstanding questions that have been entered into the question pane. And so if you, I think that's fine with me. So if you have a question that you entered in the question pane and has not been answered and you're able to hang on the line, feel free to do that. We'll do that for a few minutes and I'll update folks as we go. But before we do that, I would just like to thank you very much for your time for today's webinar. Again, I understand this is a big chunk of your day and a big part of your jobs to work with DLC, and we really appreciate your input throughout the 5.0 and 5.1 process. We really look forward to working with you on future versions and down the road. So thanks very much. If you have questions, you can hang out. If not, have a good rest of the day. Thank you.